Hello everyone. Incident detection and response, or SOC functions. This is the topic of today's episode. If you are watching on YouTube or listening to us on the podcast, I'm gonna touch today on a very important topic for any leader who's currently setting up a new function to establish an incident detection and response capability, or already have something in place and would like to improve it. What I'm gonna give you is few steps. If you follow them, you will make sure that you follow a structured, systematic way when it's come to setting up your function. And at the same time, you will become very resourceful and you will tackle the most important thing first instead of tackling the easiest to monitor first, which is the common mistake that I usually see. To start first, don't rush to start to choose which SIEM tool that you will be using. And I will tell you a little bit later why. You start first by defining what you need to protect. To make sure that we zoom out a little bit and look at the big picture, the ultimate goal of incident detection and response here is to make sure that you protect your asset from any attack, right? When something happens, you want to make sure you have the ability to detect it and you have systematic approach when it's come to containing it and responding to it. These are the key goals of IDR function. To be able to apply this, you need to start first by defining what actually you're trying to protect, and these are the assets. This is the first step ever, is the assets. What are the key assets that are deemed valuable for my organization? You start first by classifying them. You try first by what are the physical assets that I want to monitor. Let's say your corporate laptop, your phones, your Internet of Things, maybe your access door or CCTV cameras or network devices. This is a class of asset. And then you go to the next class of asset, which is network. These are basically the cloud network that you have, the remote connection that you establish with your employees and your internal resources, if there is any, the corporate internet environment, and any form of network you might have that could be attacked. And then you move on to the next class, which is application. These are basically the key offering that you offer for your customers, right? The client-facing or customer-facing tools or portals, either apps or websites, and its backend, of course. And also the internal tools and internal systems. So that's the third class. Then you move on to the fourth class here, which is the data. You have structured data and unstructured data. Structured data, these are the key databases that you have, like SQL database or Postgres. And the unstructured one, this is documents like slides, PDFs, Word file, sheets, and then you people as well. This is another class of assets. Some people get offended when I say this, but this is basically we're looking at things in a structured way. Now you define your assets. You need next to start to prioritize these assets. That's the second step. Prioritize them based on the most valuable for you. And this can be a little bit tricky, right? We're not going to dive deep into how to do that, but I'm going to tell you a very quick way to do it. Think of each class and then look at all these assets and list them down and then say, if I have to choose one of these assets to be compromised, what would it be? Of course, this is unrealistic. We're not going to do this. You're not going to compromise anything. But what you're trying to do here is called the process of elimination. You choose the least important for you, you take it out of the list, and that's the bottom of the priority. And then you ask yourself the same question. Now, based on what I have remaining, what will be my next one? And then you eliminate it, and so on until you end up with one or few that you deem high risk or the top priorities. And this will be the top priority assets. And now you might be wondering why right now we're trying to prioritize. You will see that in a bit once we get into the next stage. Because I assume, like any other company, like any other team, you have limited resources. And for you to have limited resources, it doesn't make any sense to go and try to protect your least important, least valuable assets first. That's not wise. What you're trying to do is to allocate your resources where it matters first. If, God forbid, things went wrong and something happened to one of these least priority, at least you have a reason and you have a solid story why this happened. And at the same time, also, it will help you later when it's come to the resource management, right? When it's come to defining how many people do you need to have to start to monitor this function, because everything we try to do over here, it will generate work to your team. So make sure you prioritize your assets. And once you prioritize your asset for each class, then you move on to the next step, which is the risks, right? You try to come up with attack scenarios for each that are applicable for each of these assets. Start again from the most important one first, and then think of your CIA triad. What are the attack scenarios that could happen that might impact the confidentiality of information on the corporate laptop? What are the attack scenarios that could happen that could possibly leak the data in my database? And then you can basically, the sky is your limit. Of course, don't overdo it, just focus on the most key ones. And of course, if you have limited resources, ChatGPT can be a very valuable resource for you. Describe the asset, describe the nature, describe the type, and then it will tell you what are the key ones, key risks that might happen. And of course, for each risk, you want to prioritize using the likelihood and the impact. And then you should end up with list of priorities, either critical, high, medium, low, or maybe you can score them. It's up to you, however you want to do this. But eventually what you want to end up with is list of assets, classes, and then for each class you put your assets, and then for each asset that is prioritized, you have basically the attack scenarios that are prioritized based on the risk, and so on. Now, looking at this list, this is probably, I've seen in my career history multiple times where you will never be able to cover everything, because this is a moving target. This is a list that's continuously changing, right? There is more asset being added. There is more asset that yesterday was critical, now is not critical anymore, being decommissioned, and so on. But that will help you definitely a lot when it's come to prioritizing your resources. Now we have all this list. Now we have all this information. Come for every attack scenario and start to think of what we call indication of attack or indication of compromise. These are two different things. Indication of attack, I give you a simple example. Let's say if one of the attack scenarios here is a highly privileged cloud administrative account is being compromised, right? Somebody managed to get access to this. A very probable attack scenario here is somebody trying to brute force this, given the assuming that there is no two-factor authentication. An indication of attack here is multiple attempts of failure. So that's here what you want to log. That's here what you want to put a threshold on. If it goes beyond the threshold, then your alert should be triggered, and then later on you can start to see what you're gonna act on, what action are you planning to take. But that can be a very nice way of looking at things and maybe prioritizing them. So list down all of these and then pause. Don't do anything. Over here, now it's a very good time to go and find out what are the good SIEM or SOR in the market. And why I'm saying this right now, not at the early stage. Why? Because if you want to be resourceful, which is one of the key words that I use at the beginning of this video, you probably want to spend the least amount of time in integrating these assets with your SIEM and try to feed these logs into your SIEM. And the way to do this is by making sure that the SIEM that you're going to choose has native integration with a lot of them. It would be amazing if you can find native integration with all of them, but at least the majority of them, because that will save you hours of the team effort in trying to build custom integration. And sometimes this custom integration maybe can mean that you need to dump the data in a maybe S3 bucket and then read them there, which can introduce latency also. So it's not good. So if you have an instant, almost real-time integration or connection for any of your assets with these SIEMs, that's what you should be prioritizing, because that will save you a lot of money later on down the line. You finish this and you basically, now you're shortly listing the SIEMs that are the most capable, and when it's come to integrating with all your assets, then you want to look into next is the probable storage that I will need. This is the most tricky part. It's very hard for you at the beginning to know what is the storage that you need. Basically the data ingested, logs, the volume of logs that you need to ingest on a daily basis. You can try to maybe spend some time, maybe a few days or a week from your team based on the indication of attack or indication of compromise that I was talking about. Look at the logs. What is the volume based on the application usage that I have? And then maybe try to do this for the key risk. Estimate probably realistically for the critical risks that you have identified for every asset and their associated indication of compromise or attack. These are the ones that you are going to cover for the first year. That might give you a good indication. Keep in mind also that this data will not be accurate because you might have a lot of false positives, or maybe now there is a lot of SIEMs that can normalize this information. So basically it look for 10 failed attempt to log into an account, and then instead of showing to you as 10 entries, they can actually normalize them and show you only one and say that count is 10. So there are a lot of these things to take into consideration when you're evaluating different SIEMs. So look at the native integration with your systems. Look at the volume of the logs that you probably expect and how much this will cost you. Try also to account for the cost of your next, basically if you go beyond this quote. Let's say if you choose to start first with 100 gigabyte a day, and then we found out that no, actually I need 130, how much this 30 gigabyte will cost me, right? So you don't get a nice entry price, but then later on you get screwed because of the price will become very expensive for you to monitor and operate these things. And then you want to look into the AI capabilities that they have. Right now, most, if not all, the SIEM and SOAR solutions, they provide very nice AI capabilities that can help you correlate different attack indicators throughout different assets and might give you a little bit something completely different. For example, let's say an attempt to log into an admin account here, and then maybe combined with later on an attempt to escalate the privilege from my maybe identity service, and then combine this with different IP location login. Combine this maybe with a vulnerability that has not been patched on the corporate laptop. That might say something. If you look at each one of them, it might not tell you much. Okay, that's an attempt. But if you look at all of them, no, there is somebody on. There is something happened. There is a vulnerability that potentially could have been compromised. And then now the attacker have access to the account, trying to escalate its privilege. Oh, it's something going on over here. And that's what we call basically the correlation. And a lot of the AI tools now that kind of come natively with these tools can be very valuable for you and save you a lot of time. It help you a lot also with the querying. So this is a very important piece of capability you want to keep into consideration, because it will decrease the time for your team to be able to navigate and use this tool. The learning curve will be basically shorter. So these are some of the stuff that you take into consideration. And then my advice, always opt in for 1 year. Try to avoid long-term commitment, because all the tools look beautiful, nice, capable when you talk to the sales team. But once you start using them and you start face issues, you're gonna have the real experience. And that can be only done when you try. So if you can get a trial period for a month, that might be a good indication to see. But again, you're not gonna get the full experience until you go through different and multiple integration with your assets. And that might take actually more than a month. So I would strongly advise you to try to go for 1 year in case something went wrong, you made the wrong decision, choose the wrong tool. Then after this, you can renew for a 2 or 3 or multiple year contract. Another thing also, treat your SIEM tool as a restaurant that you go into. When you go to a restaurant in a place that you haven't, in an area that you haven't been before, what do? You check Google Maps, you check the reviews, you see what people are saying, right? You probably order them by recency to choose, basically to see the latest ones. Do the same, but using G2 and Gartner. These are very good tools. This is what basically Google Maps equivalent for SaaS tools. You will see a lot of people writing their experience, either positive or negative, and it will give you a good indication of what you might be facing. So take this into consideration, keep that in mind, and evaluate these, and treat your SIEM choice as if you are choosing a restaurant. Once you get started, then you go for basically the stage of integration, and then from the integration you go to the fine-tuning. Fine-tuning here is how can you optimize for cost? How can you make sure that you only log what's needed? You don't excessively log everything and then maybe I will use it, because all of these consume gigabytes, and all these gigabytes is something that you pay for. So having these steps can definitely help you a lot get things right and make sure that you are focusing on the most impactful one. To summarize, you start first by determining and listing down your key asset classes. Then list down all the assets within these classes, and then prioritize these assets based on the importance. Once you prioritize these assets, strive to basically come up with attack scenarios that could impact your confidentiality, your integrity, and your availability. And then for each of these attack scenarios, think of what could be the indication of attack, what could be the indication of compromise, Now I know my indication of attack, indication of compromise. This is what I need to log. Try to estimate roughly how many gigabytes you would need a day, and then now go out, choose your SIEM that can natively integrate with your ecosystem, minimize the time to set up, minimize the time for value that you need to spend, and then making sure to kind of avoid, if you can, committing to more than a year, at least for the first time. And then once you have things in place and you set things up, then you start fine tune and make sure you optimize while you're going through all these basically periodized list of what you need to monitor. Start to make sure also you keep an eye on the false positives, so you avoid false positive alerts, you avoid noise, and at the same time also you avoid extra cost. I hope that was useful. Thank you so much. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe if you are interested to watch more videos in cybersecurity, privacy, or IT. If you are watching on YouTube, I want you to know also that there is a podcast where you can listen to these episodes as well while commuting to work or at your convenience. Thank you so much.